This could be difficult, though, because a lot of folks who are what are called VARs, value-added resellers, are not happy about this message because they look at it and say, well, wait a minute, what's in it for us? You know, we're used to taking the HP brands and kind of adding some value to it, putting some software on it, and moving it along, and we're in the supply chain that way. If you're selling the cloud infrastructure, then they don't need to buy from us. They're cutting them out of the supply chain.
I was really surprised by this story because nothing about Hewlett-Packard, HP, had, in my mind, was branded or associated with the cloud at all. Have they ever done anything like this before? Do they have any experience in the cloud computing?
They have some, but this is new. This is a new business for them. They certainly have lots of enterprise experience. Let's not short them there. But they have never done what Amazon has done. They have never done what IBM has done at that scale. So this is something that's, you know, it's the kind of thing you have to do if you want to grow, but it's certainly risky. They also
do have a point in that they say they provide hardware for 7 of the 10 largest cloud services. And so from that perspective, I think it might be the kind of thing where they just found themselves sitting on a gold mine and they're like, why are other people making money on this? Why don't we jump on it? But the question, of course, is how do their clients who are buying all this stuff enjoy their provider suddenly becoming a competitor? That I would imagine that would not go over really well.
Well, they're sitting there on the gold mine selling pickaxes to people, and then all of a sudden went, wait a minute, what if we just took these pickaxes in ourselves? And so they started going into the gold mine, and all the guys who were buying pickaxes are like, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing?
There's that awkward moment where they're walking in and they're like, all right, so how do we do this, guys? We've been giving you pickaxes, but we'll hit the wall.
How do you use this pickaxe to get the gold out?
Right. This will be really interesting. I know that they've tried a lot of different strategies in the past. This is so far and I mean this purely from a marketing and branding perspective. It's so far of what I perceive their core competency. I'll be really interested to see how they pull this off, or if anyone says, let me go to the HP Cloudland for my apps.
Also, they mentioned that WebOS, HP Touchpad, coming in June. It looks like there's a leak from a retailer that might be coming for $500 in June. They'll have WebOS for PC. Remember, they're going to put WebOS on all of their Windows machines that they sell as a kind of a top layer. And that PC beta will definitely be out by year's end. They plan to ship 100 million WebOS devices this year, including tablets like the touchpad, phones like the PCs, and printers with WebOS as well.
How does WebOS stack up against Android?
In what way?
I mean, as far as robustness, as far as ease of use or whatever. Because here's what I'm wondering: is if I'm a developer right now, I only have to make my product twice. I only have to make it once for iOS, and then I make it again for Android. With WebOS coming in, they've got to grab the market share, and they've got to please the developers and give them some reason to make their apps again. Because if
you got to do that by getting market penetration. You got to sell a bunch of these devices. So that is why I think it's smart to put WebOS on Windows, because then all of a sudden, if you make an app for WebOS, you're not just making it for the phone. You're also making it for the printer. You're making it for the tablet. You're making it for a PC. It just runs everywhere at once. I think that's what they're betting on. Whether that actually will come to pass, whether people will actually use WebOS on a PC, or I don't know. And the thread that ties both of these parts of the announcement together is, how is Microsoft going to take this? Because Microsoft's Azure platform is their cloud enterprise, and HP has been using that. So now HP says, I'm going to eat a little bit of your lunch there. They're going to keep using Azure, but they're also going to do their own. And then they say, and you know what? We're going to ship our own tablets. We'll keep shipping Windows tablets, but we're going to keep shipping WebOS tablets. So Microsoft's got to be a little concerned about this, I would think.
I would imagine. I mean, it's certainly dusting everything up. I also wonder how much of the decision to go with WebOS comes with the fact that, I don't know, we got it. We got it from that Palm thing that we did a while back. We're sitting on it.
Well, that's why but that's also why they bought Palm. They're like, they didn't buy Palm so that they could lose money on the pre. They bought Palm to get WebOS. They're like, that was what they were after, and now they got to make it pay for itself.
All right. Well, then get that horse a-running.
Yeah, that's right. Get those pickaxes.
Get that money, a WebOS move.
All right. I think we can solve piracy. We've got two good ideas here. One comes from the Media Piracy Project, which is not a project to go pirate media, by the way. They were analyzing it.
It's three guys in a dorm room for the Media Piracy Project.
I know how to legitimize us. Let's give us a name.
The Media Piracy Project is not that. The Media Piracy Project comes from the Social Science Research Council. They're a sociology think tank. They've been around since the 20s. They did a 3-year study into media piracy in emerging economies, concentrated on countries like Russia, Mexico, and India, and essentially found out that all of this stuff about suing people, making it illegal, arresting folks, none of that works. No amount of anti-piracy enforcement will change the economics that drive copyright theft. You've got to make things cheaper. They cite the example of Russia, where legal versions of The Dark Knight sell for $15, which is roughly the same price you'd pay in the United States. But because wages are so much lower in Russia, that price represents a much higher percent of a consumer's income, the equivalent of selling The Dark Knight for $75. Pirate versions can be obtained for less than a third of that price, so boom, you go and you get the pirate version.
Right. Well, and the study also confirms from a sociological standpoint, these countries where piracy is rampant are no less moral. They're no more likely to actually steal something or kill other people or whatever. It's just a case where the economics of the situation are such. I mean, here in America, Triumph for Size, imagine every piece of media that you buy instead of pirate suddenly costs 5 times as much. If you wanted that video game, suddenly it's $250. If you want that DVD, it's suddenly $75. I think in many ways with services like Steam, with the iTunes store, we finally have a low enough price and an easy enough way to get a hold of media legitimacy that we're finally emerging. Many people are emerging from the dark days of rampant piracy here in the United States. But if all of a sudden stuff costs that much more, we'd be rolling back to piracy super fast.
In the United States, we can stop piracy, at least according to Daniel Castro, an analyst at the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, by putting in bandwidth caps.
What?
See, he says the government should allow pricing structures and usage caps that discourage online piracy. Because if you have a lot of bandwidth, that's all you use it for. It appears to be his contention.
Look, of all the places to try to sell us on that, a network where we stream live video and that we podcast out giant chunks of high quality data to people who want to consume it. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous and offensive. And
Daniel
stupid.
Castro also suggests that deep packet inspection be routinely deployed by ISPs in order to scan subscriber traffic for potential copyright infringement. And Castro has a solution. If courts crack down on the practice, the law should be changed. Because, frankly, intellectual property is the only reason our country exists. If there were no intellectual property, we shouldn't even be alive. Brian?
There are certain times I just want so bad for Cory Doctorow to magically be at my side, to just grab the mic and just assail this kind of argument.
It's utter crap. It's born of the idea that the intellectual property industry is somehow the most important industry in the world, and that if it has even the slightest threat, that we should bring the full power of the law to bear against it. It's worse than murder. We should prioritize it above everything, and I'm sick of seeing it. Should there be laws against piracy? Sure. Should there be protections for copyright? Sure. But they are so far already beyond what is needed to create creativity, to encourage creativity, that this sort of stuff is just ridiculous. It's laughable. What we should be having a conversation about is what will happen if we had no copyright law, and how do we protect against the negatives of that, rather than saying, we've got some copyright law, but you know what? It's going to take 1% off my bottom line this year. My industry's in decline. And so I really need the FBI to give up hunting actual criminals and start cracking down on copyright law. And we should have the government mandate bandwidth caps on all ISPs, because that'll help to deter the pirates. And you know what? Let's just make the world entirely inconvenient for everyone, because I need my industry to grow by 15% every year.
Well, this to you and me sounds like a ridiculous solution to handle things that way. But you and I haven't spent gazillions of dollars to finance, different members of Congress, to get legislation, to get certain people, I don't want to say under my thumb, but to get people to support my agenda. Like, you and I don't have the massive hammer of government to use to solve are qualms or problems with copyright law. And the part that drives me, and these people who do, of course, they're going to use it if that's what they can get away with. The crazy part is if their goal really is to make the maximum amount of money from the maximum number of people, then study after study shows that if you lower the price and you increase the ease of purchase, you can tackle piracy. What was the study that said that the optimum price for an MP3 was a nickel? Because at a nickel, nobody would ever bother to torrent anything. Nobody would ever bother to even put it on a USB to give to their friends. Everybody's just like, oh yeah, no, give me the whole album.
And the objection is we won't be able to continue our industry at that price level. And that is the wrong conversation to have. We should not be having a conversation on Capitol Hill about whether your industry will survive. What these copyright laws are meant to protect is creativity, and will there be innovation and new art? And at that price level, at 5 cents, will there be innovation and new art? I think we would find the answer is yes.
Absolutely, and it should be pointed out to protect innovation and creativity for a limited time. This business that 100 years after the death of Walt Disney, the company will still own Mickey Mouse is ridiculous. This is another case of politicians that are bought and paid for.
He's not dead.
What's that?
I mean, he's not actually dead.
Are you talking about he's frozen?
He's in cryogenic.
He's in the middle of Space Mountain?
Yeah.
I saw him once when we were going around a loop.
Exactly.
He was like...
So that makes the law a little... it's hard to interpret that. But you're absolutely right. I am so tired of this argument being hijacked, and you nailed it, Brian, which is we don't have the lobbyists up there making our side of the argument. That's the biggest problem. All right. I want to devote a good portion of the show today to discussing what's going on in Japan. There are a lot of issues there. We're not going to be CNN. We're not going to cover every issue of the earthquake and the disaster relief. There are great places to find resources there, but we can help point you towards some of those resources, and we can tell you a little bit about the technology. Most important, we can actually give you some on-the-scene reports from listeners in the Tech News Today audience who have been good enough to call and write us from Japan. I want to start off with the economic side of things, not because the human side isn't important. It is much more important. It's extremely important, but you can't ignore the effect. It's interesting to see, like, well, how is this going to affect business? And I was listening to the Economist podcast this morning, and they said, look, we always tend to overestimate the economic impact of natural disasters because they are so dramatic. It turns out usually they don't have nearly the effects that you think they're going to have. And there's an article out today in the San Jose Mercury News essentially saying that same thing. It looks like there's going to be a tightness in the flash memory market, but most of the industry seems to be okay. One of the lucky things is most industrial complexes are located in the south of Japan, so they weren't as impacted by the earthquake as the companies up in the north. The two most pressing concerns for the industry are damage to the transportation infrastructure and reliability of power, according to Dale Ford at IHS Supply. It could take as long as 2 months to resolve those problems. And I'm seeing that in a lot of places I'm reading. It's not so much that the factories can't work, or the factories are having a hard time getting back, but keeping them running and having the efficiencies of a constantly running factory is an issue because of the brownouts and the power issues. And also transportation. It's like you can make all the flash memory you want, but if you can't get it on a train and get it to a boat, and then get it shipped or get it to an airplane, it's going to be hard to sell it.
Yeah, and at first it feels a little bit morbid. Obviously, people are dealing with a massive, massive crisis on the other side of the world. But here in America, and I know we have listeners and viewers all over the world, it feels a little bit weird to be like, yeah, but my gizmos continue to be on time. But it is important to take a moment and take a long view and recognize what's going to happen to the distribution logistics of the way not only our electronics, but all the imports that we get from Japan,
right,
and all the affected areas.
Yeah, it's definitely not the most important story coming out of Japan, but that doesn't mean that it's should be ignored entirely. Some other really good stories coming out of Japan. Engadget reports today that AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, Dish Networks, Comcast, and Cox Communications have all announced plans under which free calls can be made to Japan, and as well as free text messages in a lot of cases between now and March 31st. So, for all the vitriol we were spewing at some of these companies earlier today, this is a good move, and I applaud them for it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, and look, this is one of those times when it's like there's nothing but good to be done. You do good for the people. You do good publicity for yourself. We know the folks over at Apple kept their Wi-Fi on. They were allowing people to come in and actually bunk down in the Apple stores. It's brief moments like this where to see everyone come together and put aside, the bottom line for a brief moment makes everyone feel good.
Yeah, that Apple story is really touching. Kevin Rose had some emails that he posted on his blog about, it became that scene from the movie where everyone gathers around the electronics store and watches the TV broadcast, except for the modern era. Everyone was in the Apple store watching the live stream on the laptops that they have set up there. Also, Facebook set up a Japan earthquake page for users to find information about disaster relief. Google has set up a crisis response project. We've talked about that in the past. Although an interesting spin on that, Google is now encouraging people to take photos of the posters with people's names with their cell phones and send them to an address tohoku.anpi.google@Picasa Web. And once sent, the photo will be automatically uploaded to the Picasa Web album, where people can view this and keep track of each other. NTT Docomo, Japan's largest wireless carrier, has set up a database where you can enter the cell phone number of a person to confirm his or her safety. Just a lot of coming together of businesses large and small in this effort to try to help people out.
Now, this is interesting. In the chat room, Stephen M. just tweeted or sent over to us that Verizon's offering free access to TV Japan through their Fios TV service.
So
and I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's great.
I think it's fascinating that we see how the interconnectedness of our society nowadays not only makes possible massive amounts of relief. We saw with the Red Cross donations, is so super easy just to donate over your phone, but also in prevention of disaster. There was a recent tweet from Scientific American saying, and I forget the number, it was millions or billions of dollars were saved by proper planning and preparation for the tsunami. And in a case where time is of the essence, once you have an earthquake and you need to get the word out that we expect a massive tsunami to happen and you got to get to high ground, then it matters that all of a sudden everyone